Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله عز وجل وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our dear respected listeners and viewers from around the world. Our beloved brothers Ismail and Riyaz, Hafiz Mama and everyone. Alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this beautiful day and in this beautiful month of Ramadan, in this beautiful state of fasting has allowed us to enter into the beautiful state of his beautiful Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his beautiful life, his beautiful Seerah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. As is the practice, we have a short recap before we continue. So previously on the Seerah, in yesterday's episode, we discussed those moments in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, approaching on from the fourth and onto the fifth year of Nubuwah, the difficulties that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had as he was spreading the message of Islam, going out day in, day night, day in, day out, going and spreading the message of Islam, the message of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and how the wife of Abu Lahab, on top of all of the torture, not on top of all of the emotional abuse, had spurred out a poem in regards to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and given a dishonorable insult that they tried to attach to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the name of Mudhammam, and they would just make insults and poems regarding Mudhammam. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even with all of that pain, he positively responded, saying, "Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects His Messenger," saying, "They speak about someone called Mudhammam, whilst I am Muhammad." Because every insult that they held towards Mudhammam, whoever that is, whilst I am Muhammad, in other words. So like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his positivity and smile helped all of those that were pained at the situation and the persecution that they were facing. On top of this, we discussed that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was facing great pains and also worried and concerned regarding his beautiful daughters, Sayyidah Ruqayya radiallahu anha and Sayyidah Kulthum radiallahu anha, who had been divorced by the sons of Abu Lahab, again from his uncle and aunt. And at this moment, we have Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, who is even more of a worthy and even more handsome and even more rich and even more influential and well-respected person. But as well as in the dunya sense, he was the most honorable in the sight of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the light of Iman, and being one of the first early believers in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who had come along and married the blessed daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidah Ruqayya radiallahu anha, and how they become such a beautiful, loving couple that even people of Makkah and Medina, the people have begun to talk about the amount of love that they had between them and how beautiful a couple, how blessed a couple they were. And we continued to see how the Quraysh continued to persecute and harm the Prophet ﷺ and his Sahabah. And eventually it came to a moment where that beautiful, after facing the day of the frowns of Quraysh, when the Prophet ﷺ would come home with a smile of his beautiful son, Sayyidina Abdullah radiallahu anh, it came to that moment, that painful moment where Sayyidina Abdullah had become ill and Sayyidina Abdullah had passed away, and the Prophet ﷺ had to bury him with his own hands. And at this moment, whilst the Prophet ﷺ is in the pain of and the tears of losing his beloved son, his innocent child, the Quraysh was celebrating that the Prophet ﷺ has lost a child and that he has no male children, and saying that Muhammad Abdul, that his name has been cut off, his message has been cut off. Na'udhu billah. When we see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defended his messenger and how his name is now one of the most remembered and most celebrated, most honored names, and his life is the most celebrated. His everything about him, sallallahu, is the most honored and remembered and continuous till the day of judgment and beyond, in both worlds, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But yet those individuals who said that are long forgotten. No one knows who they are. People have forgotten them. They are only remembered for how they were forgotten. Subhanallah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the beautiful surah of Kawthar, telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he has been given Kawthar, and that the inna sha'niyaka, the one who reviles you, O my beloved, he has been cut off. And this is the Lord of the world saying it. And we discussed how the Prophet ﷺ continued with these perils and these torturesome events, and yet stayed strong and continued to give da'wah no matter what they threw in his path. And we spoke about how Abu Jahl and the likes had secretly gone and listened to the Quran at night at Darul Arqam. And when they realized that this truly is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when they had seen the success and the mission of the Prophet ﷺ and their ultimate loss, they couldn't take it anymore. And Abu Jahl had went into a fit of rage, his blood boiling, his face red, and he turned into something completely worse, even more of a shaitan than he already was, even worse of a criminal than he already was, more evil than he already had been. And yet, when he tried to lead the Quraysh into his utter turmoil, Utbah and the likes and many others had decided that they'd lost too much. They were, rumors of their own children and even the wealthy, even the influential, and many of their slaves becoming Muslim had been spread, and they couldn't take it anymore. And these two factions of Quraysh had been, divided. One, saying to take a diplomatic approach. One, following Abu Jahl, was winding them up to go into absolute turmoil. No more mercy, even though they were already showing no mercy. But with this, they had one last chance, and Utbah and the likes go and negotiate with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And after everything they try, when the Quran is recited, Utbah comes and covers up the blessed mouth of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and comes back pale faced, and he said, "I don't want anything to do with this anymore." In other words, there is no stopping Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This message is true, and this doesn't come from a human being. Even he realized that day, but the kufr within their hearts continued. They riled each other up. And Utbah saw that his own son, when he had heard that my father has gone and tried to do this to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his own son came out in front of the Kaaba and said, Abu Hudhayfa ibn Utbah ibn Rabi'a, the son of Utbah ibn Rabi'a, says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. And his slave Salim has become Muslim, and he's now the adopted son, sort of freed slave. He's now the adoptive grandson of Utbah ibn Rabi'a. And this became as a strong blow to those people who couldn't recognize the honor of Iman, and who only saw people according to their disgusting sights, where color and skin and race and nationalism and tribalism and wealth made people absolutely disgraced in their sight, while in reality they were the most honorable in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Utbah had to accept this. And now with this center, a wave was sent through, where many slaves of the Makkans were now even the leaders of Quraysh were exposed as Muslim, and many of the sons and the direct relatives of the youth of the next generation of the Quraysh were either becoming sympathizing or accepting Islam. And this became something completely unacceptable to Quraysh and to the likes of them. And during this time, Abu Jahl, now in a fit of rage, said, "You had your chance. Now it's my turn." And he prepared that huge field and that area in Mecca where anyone who had any connection with Islam, if they were weak and if they were slaves and they didn't have any tribe to protect them or give an alliance or clan to protect them, they were taken and beaten there. They were arrested and quarantined and detained into that place and beaten and tortured just because they believed in one Allah. And this was a form of religious intolerance that was brought upon these people who were just saying La ilaha illallah without harming anyone else, just spreading the message of Islam and believing in the message of Islam, even albeit silently. And it was at this moment that we ended when Umayyah ibn Khalaf, one of the main recurring characters of the Seerah, one of the main opponents of the Prophet ﷺ, comes to know that his slave Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah has become Muslim. And when he forces him to denounce religion and accept him, Umayyah, as his only master and Lord, na'udhu billah, and when Sayyidina Bilal refuses and only says, La ilaha illallah, ahadun ahad, at that moment he's dragged out into this field and he's laid into the scorching ground of the heat of the desert, surrounded by seeing the torture of all these people. And in that horrific sight, he's laid down as Umayyah times him up and brings out his whip. And it's at this moment that we ended, and we'll continue today. And as is the practice, we request everyone to recite salawat upon our beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. So now, as we see, as these dark clouds form through and we enter into this scene of Makkah, where you have this open field, and Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah is on the scorching ground, and this love of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is so beloved to us and was so beloved to our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who's so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who this person is being, this blessed honorable person is being seen as a slave, is being oppressed as a slave, and they are lowering his rank in their sight simply because he was poor, simply because he didn't have the same wealth and riches, simply because his skin color was different to them, simply because he was of African descent. Because of these reasons, they were making him, they're trying to lower the rank of the one who Allah took his rank and put it above almost all of mankind, with the greatest elite Sahabah. This person was being laid on the ground, on a scorching ground, with his bare skin being burnt by that desert heat in this field that was strategically chosen to be a torturesome location, surrounded by the cries of the Muslims, the weak slaves who were being tortured and beaten and whipped. And Umayyah takes out this whip and begins to whip Sayyidina Bilal on his bare skin, forcing him to denounce Islam. And he continues to whip and whip, not for minutes, not for tens of minutes, but for hours upon end, he continues to beat Sayyidina Bilal on his bare skin, radiallahu anh, in this scorching heat. And whilst around him are many, many other Sahaba who are being scorched and beaten on the ground. And if whipping wasn't enough, then Umayyah ibn Khalaf would come and he would take huge stones, and boiling stones, and he would come and place them upon the chest of Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, and on the stomach of Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, and the body of Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu. So as well as the immense weight, the burning, scorching heat would come and burn the skin of Sayyidina Bilal that was already beaten and whipped radiallahu anhu. And through all of this pain, through the cries of his pain, he would just say, Ahadun Ahad, Ahadun Ahad, Ahadun Ahad. Allah is one, Allah is one, Allah is one. And many around him would continue to be beaten, and these would continue. And at this moment, the Quraysh would make a statement under the new found leadership of Abu Jahl, that whatever the leaders were doing, their sons and their youth had to now also take an active part in this, to ensure that they would not start sympathizing or becoming Muslim because of what had already happened. Their slaves and their children were warned, and they were shown this side, so that their slaves wouldn't accept Islam, and their children were given more of a hatred and more of a wind up to become more, part of this evil act, so that they would also stay far away from Islam and from sympathy towards the Muslims. Like this, you have, if you look at the open leaders, number one, you have Abu Talib. Abu Talib was completely averse to all of these things that they were doing. And Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, was the one who gave two of his great sons, Ali ibn Abi Talib and Jafar ibn Abi Talib. Both of them, Jafar al-Sadiq and Ali radiallahu anh, were given to the Messenger ﷺ. And he instructed them, saying, don't you ever leave your cousin. Stay by his side. Don't ever renounce his religion. Stick to his message. Perform the salah that he teaches you. And he gave this fatherly advice to his sons, saying, you never ever leave my nephew. You never ever leave your cousin. Follow his religion. Pray with him. Stick to him. Stick by his side. And he instructed both his sons to go and proclaim Islam, to proclaim the kalima, to proclaim the shahada, and stick to his nephew no matter what happens. Saying, I am elderly, but you give him the support of your youth and your strength that I can't give him. Stay by his side at all means. So Sayyidina Jafar and Sayyidina Ali was always by the side of the Prophet ﷺ. And Sayyidina Abu Talib was always at the side of his nephew, Muhammad ﷺ, our Prophet ﷺ. But the remainder now, we have Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl would make sure that he would make every person that he knew was a Muslim, he would make their life a living nightmare. If he would find Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud in the streets, radiallahu anh, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud was one of the first Sahaba, but he was also one of the more weaker Sahaba. He would work day and night out of poverty, grazing goats and sheep for his employers. But he would wear ragged clothing because he couldn't afford proper clothing. And because of the malnutrition, his body was weak and his legs would be exposed because he didn't have enough clothing to cover his legs. But his legs were weak and thin and frail because of the poverty that he was in. And Abu Jahl, when you see Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud walking in the streets, he would beat Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He would hit him, and then he would make fun of him. He would make fun of his clothing. He would make fun of his legs, saying, you got legs like sheep. Na'udhu billah. Saying you're not just a shepherd, but you're lower than a shepherd. You're like sheep, and you have stick legs like a sheep. Na'udhu billah. And you would make fun out of his clothing. And how evil do you have to be to hurt the heart of someone who is poor? When someone can't afford clothing, when someone can't afford food, when someone is malnutrition because of their poverty, and they're already grief-stricken, and they're already struggling with the pain of this poverty. How evil do you have to be to go and then harm this person and emotionally abuse this person because of their poverty and make fun out of their poverty? How evil do you have to be to mock someone's poverty, to mock someone's dire situation of helplessness, that they are trying their best, working day and night to honorably earn an income, and you're making fun of that person. And on top of that, you're beating this person. And the da'wat al-madlum, the call of the oppressed, is never ever rejected. This is how he used to oppress Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. And on top of this, he would go to the field and he would make it into a sport. He would enjoy himself and he would take out all of his frustration and anger. And the more Iblis made his blood boil, he would take out the frustration of the devils through the way he would torture the Muslims. And when he found out that Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir, that young teenage Sahabi, has become Muslim and his family has become Muslim, he would go to this field where the entire family of Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir was, and he would go and beat the family of Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir. And you have Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir, who's a teenager, imagine our teenagers who are going out in the streets and enjoying themselves, having fun. This young teenager, this kid, this innocent kid, is tied up, beaten with marks all over his body. But at the same time, he sees his elderly father Yasir and his mother Sumayya, his elderly parents, being tortured in the heat, being whipped in the heat. And he's seeing that his frail parents can't take this. And his parents, although they're being beaten, they can't see their teenage child, this small innocent kid being beaten up by these merciless people in this field. Continuing around that, you have the likes of Walid ibn Mughira, who would relentlessly, instruct Khalid ibn Walid or Walid ibn Walid, and he would, sternly admonish and shout at his son Walid ibn Walid for having any sympathy towards the Muslims. He would make sure that both of them would have hatred against the Muslims and would stand tall against the Muslims. You have the likes of Asim ibn Wa'il, who tells Sayyidina Amr ibn As, his son, that no matter what happens, you have to go and prove yourself. You have to follow in the footsteps of your parents. You have to go and break ties with whoever you have if they are Muslim. And you have the likes of Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, who is, staying distant from his son Abu Hudayfa, but also taking a backseat because of what's happened. He's taking a backseat. But now his son Shayba is going to be the one who, because of the taunts of Quraysh, he's going to come and take a front seat again and bring his father back into the limelight wherever possible and say, show an open front against the Muslims. These are all main core leaders and the main core youth having a united front, an evil legion of doom against the Muslims and the people of Haqq. This is how they were treated. And if you continue, you have Suhail ibn Amr, whose sons Abdullah and Abu Jandal, when he finds out that they have become Muslim, he takes them and he chains them. He chains his own son in an underground dungeon, in a dungeon kind of scene, this abandoned old kind of underground basement type dungeon. He goes there and he chains his own sons in there because they had become Muslim. And with this, Abu Jahl, when he finds out that Ayyash and Salama, his brothers have become Muslim, who are part of the youth and the next generation, he takes his own brothers and he also beats them and locks them up in a dungeon against the will of his own mother, who is so hurt. He says, I don't care what happens, even if you're my own blood brothers. He goes and beats them, and he has so much hatred for Islam, so much evil boiling within him, that he goes and chains up his own brothers and starves them with only enough water to survive and stay alive. That is how he teaches his own brothers. You have the likes of Abu Sufyan, who is taking part and his wife that is taking part in making sure that anyone who is Muslim gets a hard time. We already know Abu Lahab, how he is treating the Muslims. Umayyah ibn Khalaf, we know that he's in this day and night, he's in this field beating Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah. And his son, Safwan ibn Umayyah, a new character that we are becoming acquainted with. Safwan ibn Umayyah is the son of Umayyah ibn Khalaf. Safwan ibn Umayyah, he goes and follows in the footsteps of his father, and he also goes and he begins to beat his own slave that had become Muslim. So now you have father and son in this field beating their slaves. And you have the likes of many of the leaders of Quraysh who would continue beating anyone that they had found who are Muslims. You have the likes of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab. Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab at this moment isn't a Muslim. He is the nephew of Abu Jahl. And he is the son of Al-Khattab, the leader of one of the foremost leaders of Adi, the faction of Adi from this Quraysh. What does he do? He goes and he finds out that Zanira or Zunaira, two ways of pronouncing it, his slave girl has become Muslim. He goes and takes her to the field and begins to beat her up. And when he finds out that one of his relatives, Sa'id ibn Zayd, has become Muslim, he takes him and ties him up, and also starts to torture him for becoming Muslim. And Umar ibn Khattab was one who would actually, as well as being part of the youth, he would actively take a role in the meetings in Dar Nadwa. And he would go, and although he wasn't ever despicable or evil like many of his other cohorts and uncles and tribal leaders, many of those elders, at the same time he was there because it was inculcated within him that what is happening is wrong. So because he believed that what is happening is wrong, these rumors were spread out, this propaganda was spread out. The media of the time and made it sure that everyone would see the Prophet ﷺ not as a Rasul and not as someone who was spreading a message. They covered that up totally. They had spread the message that he was someone who was separating father from son. He was someone who was making slaves disobey their masters. He was separating husband from wife. He was separating child from parent. And he was the one who was brainwashing people. He was a sorcerer. He was a magician. Na'udhu billah. So because of all of these evil things, all these false things that they had depicted about the Prophet ﷺ, good people had become brainwashed. Good people had become in fear and thought that they had to oppose this which was evil. And in reality, they weren't opposing Muhammad ﷺ or the Prophet ﷺ or his message. They were opposing this false depiction that they have been given, this false image that the media had given them. And that is what they truly feared. Because they hadn't met a Muslim because they were scared of it. They hadn't met the Rasul because they were scared of it. Because of this false notion that had been created. And as such, Umar ibn Khattab is one who believes that because of his strong stance against what is wrong, he believed that he had to also take a stand against this. And he would take an active part in Darul Nadwa, where his elders were, and he would listen, he would take a more of an active role in this. So now at this stage, he's beating his slave Zanira, and he's torturing his cousin for becoming Muslim. And like this, many of the Sahaba are, gruesomely tortured and oppressed simply because they were Muslim. And at this time, it is such a difficult time for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And day and night, the Sahaba would see, and say that Khadija, his beloved wife, would see and give him strength and see how much it hurt the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to see that when he goes to Darul Arqam, his beloved students, his beloved Sayyidina Bilal, his beloved Sumayyah, his beloved Ammar, his beloved Yasir, radiallahu ajma'in, all of these and many more, his beloved Zunaira, Sayyid ibn Zayd, many Sahaba were being tortured, and they were absent, and the Prophet, they were away from him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he loved them so much that in his du'as, he would cry and make dua for them by name, each and every one of them, taking them by name. Say, Ya Allah, oh, help Ayyash, help Salama, help all of these people. Allah, help the family of Yasir, help the family of Ammar ibn Yasir. This innocent child, he would make dua for all of these people. For Sayyidina Bilal, for each person who was being tortured, he would make dua for them by name. Day and night, his heart would bleed for them. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in such a state of helplessness, such a state of powerlessness, that he couldn't do anything because of the way they were detained and tortured. All day they would have to wait, and it was only at night time that the Sahaba and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would go, and they would go and they would go into this field secretly and try and give water and ease the wounds of these innocent people who are being tortured. And the Sahaba saw how much the tears and the pain on the face of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he would see these sights of how his followers, his ummah was being tortured. This was how the Quraysh began to persecute the Muslims, and his persecution continued and continued. Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, Allahu Akbar, how they tortured him. Umayyah ibn Khalaf would go and on top of the burning sand, on top of the burning stones and heavy stones that were crushing the body of Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, there would be kuffar who would come and stamp on the chest of the Sahaba, stamp on the chest of Sayyidina Bilal, and they would kick the chest of Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, and how they would choke out of their breath in immense pain because of how their chests are being stamped while they're already in a state of such pain. Umayyah ibn Khalaf would come and he would take boiling metal that would be left out in the sun, that would be scorching. If anyone's held a hot pan, a metal pan, or a hot iron, and how that touches the skin, he would take that metal and place it on the skin of Sayyidina Bilal. He would take armor that was being scorched and put that armor on Sayyidina Bilal and leave him in that for hours upon end until that armor would become like a metal frying pan and fry the skin of Sayyidina Bilal. That's what he would do to this person that the Rasulullah loved so much. And then he would remove him from this metal that was sticking to his skin because of the burning and the frying and the bubbling of the skin of Sayyidina Bilal. He would remove the metal and then he would whip him on that skin. And then he would take Sayyidina Bilal and tie him up and tell children to insult him, whilst horses and animals would drag Sayyidina Bilal that is tied up by his neck, being strangled by this rope as this animal pulls the rope and he's being dragged through the streets of Makkah. Only because he said Ahadun Ahad. And then in this state, when his body has burnt, bubbled skin, scars, tortures, blood, darkened black scars, bleeding, absolutely retorted to pain, his neck strangled, his chest stamped upon, he would then be brought back and thrown back on the ground. And then the dung and the excretion of animals would be placed on his skin. The disgusting smell of animals, dung and feces would be placed and spread over this pain and sting in his already burning skin of Sayyidina Bilal. Look at the immense level of torture. Beyond inhumane. Beyond inhumane. You will never find someone who's been tortured to a level state worse than how those believers were tortured. No matter how different forms of torture comes, it would never reach how bad And time doesn't allow us to go into all of the ways that they had tortured these innocent Muslims. And this is the gruesome way that they would torture Sayyidina Bilal. You can't even imagine the body of Sayyidina Bilal after all of this torture. And the Sahaba would narrate, they would do riwayat narrating of how years later, when they would, even if they're in a state of Umrah or Ihram, if they would take the upper sheets off, they would even years and decades later, they would see the effects and the marks and the scars of this torture that Sayyidina Bilal and many of the other Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een had bore on these gruesome months and years of torture. And alongside Sayyidina Bilal, you have the family of Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir. Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir's family is beaten and tortured and burnt. They would take metal that has been scorched in the flame and place it on their skin and brand them, cauterize them out of pain, out of torture. And it is at this moment that Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir, seeing the torture of his parents as a kid, has to see day in day out his parents tortured until Yasir, his elderly father, passes away because of his elderly body couldn't take the immense torture. They tortured him to death. This elderly man that came as a refugee from Yemen, that had nothing, and spent all his life feeling indebted and serving the Quraysh, he was tortured to death in front of the eyes of his teenage child and his wife, radiallahu anhu ajma'een. And just moments before his father passes away, what does his father have to witness? He was tortured to death. But how was he tortured to death? Whilst being tied up and seeing what spectacle, seeing what painful moment, that as he's tied up and breathing his last, as he's fighting with life, as he's fighting for in this frail state, as he's fighting for his life, what was one of the final things that he saw? That his son, Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir, is screaming, horrifically screaming, as Abu Jahl comes and takes a spear and places it upon points it upon the body of Sumayya radiallahu anha, the wife, the beloved wife of Sayyidina Yasir and the mother of Sayyidina Ammar. He's seeing this state where his innocent wife is placed on the ground and her 2 hands are tied up and her 2 feet are tied up. And all of these 4, the 2 of her hands and the 2 feet of hers, the ropes was then tied up to an animal. So you have 4 animals. Her body is there. You have the 4 animals where her hands and feet are tied up to these animals. And what you have is you have her 2 hands tied up to an animal. And you have her 2 feet tied up to an animal. And these animals are then being whipped to go and run outside. So as these animals are running from all 4 corners, from her hands, her arms, her joints, and her feet, she's being pulled while she's fixed on this ground. So she can't move anywhere, but from all 4 directions, she's being pulled. And her bones and joints are being dislocated while she's being pulled and tortured, and she's screaming and crying innocently because of the immense pain. And as he is fighting for his life, Sayyidina Yasir is seeing this horrific state where his wife is being stretched and pulled in torture by these animals. And I'm not just talking about the actual animals, but those human beings that were animals and devils and shayateen that were torturing his wife like this. And on the other hand, he sees his innocent child who is screaming horrifically, seeing the state of his mother whilst being beaten himself. And he's screaming to his mother, saying, just say what they want. Oh, my mother, please let this stop. Please let them stop oppressing you like this. Just say what they want. Just say what they want to hear. And look at the iman of those Sahaba. Salah wasn't fard upon them. Ramadan wasn't fard upon them. They may not have fasted in Ramadan. They may not have prayed Zohr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Fajr, any of those things. They might have only prayed Nawafil. They might have not have fulfilled any of the fard that we have. They might have not have done any of the outward acts that we have. But look at the iman in their hearts that we don't possess. And that we hope that Allah grants us. Verses were revealed that in those immense moments of torture, when their life was at stake, when they were at gunpoint or whip point or sword point or spear point, in order to save their life, because it was never about the outwardly, it was always about the inwardly. As long as the iman was in their hearts and Allah knew that iman, if they denounced their religion or said what they want, what this Quraysh wanted to hear, just to save their life, just on tongue and face value, there would be no sin upon them, and it would be completely permissible for them to say this. And Sayyidina Ammar is reminding his mother, saying, it's permissible for you to say, you know what is in your heart, just say it. And look what happens. Abu Jahl, look at the strength of these people who were supposed to be weak, that eventually the likes of Abu Jahl and Umayyah ibn Khalaf, these people fall so weak that they go down to the ground and they whisper while people cannot hear. They whisper to these people and say, look, cut me some slack. Fine, you don't want to denounce religion. You don't want to denounce Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know what? Just say something against Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Just say something against the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Just say he's a liar. Or just say that he's, take any word that you want. Say anything in the end. But just say something against. Just say he's a liar. That's all you have to say. 2 words. Muhammad al-Kadhib. Kadhib, he's a liar. Or Kadhib Muhammad. He's lied. Na'udhu billah. Astaghfirullah. Just say these words. That's all you have to say. And at this moment, Abu Jahl is saying, while she's being saying that Sumayya is being stretched out, and saying that Yasir is fighting for his life, seeing in his final moments, seeing this state, seeing his child horrifically sleep, saying, oh my mother, just say it, please. At that moment, when the torture stops, and Abu Jahl stops the animals, just so he can say, go on, Sumayya, are you going to give me what I want? At that moment, Ammar says, oh my mother, please say it. Just say it. And at that moment, when her screaming stops and she catches her breath, she looks at Abu Jahl, she looks at her son, and in this state, before the pain can even ease off, she looks to her son and says, oh my son, if you were in my position, would you say a word against the Prophet ﷺ just to live? Just for a few more breaths? Would you say a word against the Prophet ﷺ? My heart can't. Would yours? And at that moment, Sayyidina Ammar ibn Yasir looks down, because even he knows the answer to that question. That we would rather die but say a word against the Prophet ﷺ. Because they knew Iman wasn't just about La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. It was about the love that they had for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the honor that they had for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in their heart. And with these words, as she says that she proclaims in front of Abu Jahl that that life isn't more important than me, for me as much as my Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I love my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than my own life. You can kill me, but I would not say even one word against him to live. And at that moment, Abu Jahl is so frustrated that he takes a spear, as says that Sumayya declares their love for Allah and declares their love for the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Jahl takes the spear and he takes his spear, and as Sayyidina Ammar's eyes pop out, and as Sayyidina Yasir breathes his final breaths in this torturesome state, fighting for life, he sees that state where Sayyidina Ammar horrifically screams, and Sayyidina Sumayya declares the love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Abu Jahl takes his spear and he thrusts it into the private parts of Sayyidina Sumayya radhiyallahu anhu, in front of her son, in front of her dying husband, and makes her the first Shahida of Islam, makes her the first martyr of this religion, the first martyr that was tied up, stretched out by animals, and while she declares the love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, innocently unable to even defend herself, Abu Jahl, that evil, wretched criminal, with his eyes boiling with hatred and kufr, and with the blood boiling from Iblis, he takes that spear and he thrusts it through the body, through the innocent, pure body of Sayyidina Sumayya radhiyallahu anha, and makes her the first shaheed. And she breathes her last as the blood flows through from her body, and that spear is in her body, through her private parts, in front of her son, in open daylight, in front of her husband, who loved her so much. And as this horrific state of his son screaming, and saying that Sumayya passing away with blood pouring through her pure body, saying that Yasir fights for his dying, with his dying breath, gives that one last scream and says to his son, oh my son, please give my salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he breathes his last and he leaves this world as one of the earliest martyrs of this religion, with many others who passed away that day, from the earliest martyrs and earliest shuhada of this religion, with their final words, what? A declaration of their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at Sayyidah Sumayya radhiyallahu anha. Look at what teaching they gave to their son, that my final words would be my love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I will die for what? Not because I denounced my iman. They allowed me to keep my iman. I died because of my love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because I couldn't stop professing my love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And how did Sayyidina Yasir pass away? Say, please give my salams to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His last words was salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what Sayyidina Ammar has to see as a child, and that love no doubt inculcated in him, that no matter how much they beat him, as a child, seeing this state, tied up, unable to even go to the grave of to the body of his parents, until the night would come when the Sahabah would come and they would take these blessed individuals and bury them and give them the janazah. And these beautiful first shuhada of Islam would be remembered throughout the ages as the most honorable people, the most beloved people to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he would never forget, and he would continue to make dua for them till the end of days, till the end of time. And saying that Ammar ibn Yasir would be the one who till his last breath would be, as the Prophet ﷺ said, head to toe he is covered by Iman, because that day he inherited that Iman and that love from his parents in their dying breaths. They gave him the ultimate gift, not of wealth, but they gave him the treasure of Iman and love for Rasulullah, for Allah and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And like this, the Sahaba continuously tortured, until this continues even after this horrific state. The Quraysh don't even have a drop of mercy. They can't even see the body of Sayyidah Sumayyah, and the horrific state of seeing that son scream and that husband cry at his wife. Even that didn't bring even a drop of softness to their hard stone hearts. They continue to beat the likes of Sayyidina Zunaira and Zanira, when she was beaten by Umar ibn al-Khattab and by other leaders of Quraysh so much that she was tortured such that she lost her eyesight. She lost her eyesight and she became blind because of how much they tortured her. And at this state, we feel difficulty when people start to question Iman, people start to question faith. But like we said, the true lovers of Allah and His Rasul are those who are tested the most with those scenarios that seem the most, terrible in the dunyawi sense. In the worldly sense, they might seem the most terrible, but they are the most honoring in the akhirah. And only true hearts of that have Iman can see this, can see beyond the blood and the gruesomeness of worldly sense, and see how honorable it is in the state of the akhirah. Because those whose life is honorable in this world is not going to be the same in akhirah. Very few people are those believers who Allah gives them an honorable life in this world and in akhirah. But ultimately, those who have the most honorable life in akhirah, those who may seem the most dishonorable in this world, who may seem the most downtrodden in this world. And as Sayyidina Zanira, she loses her eyesight because of how much she's been tortured. Just imagine how they've just become Muslim. And why is it that they can bear this torture so much? It was purely the Iman, because they knew that after all of these shackles and the torture and the pain of kufr and the torture and oppression of Jahiliyyah was much worse than these physical beats. This beat was nothing compared to the freedom that they feel. Think, beat us all you want. But that pain that we used to bear in Jahiliyyah is nothing compared to the freedom that we feel of having Allah in our hearts, having Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our hearts. That is what we take for granted, that what we were born with. When they felt that light of Iman enter into their hearts, the oppression and the dhulm of kufr, they said, no matter what happens, we never want to face the pain of kufr anymore. Once Iman has entered into our hearts, that is the only thing that was so strong within them that it gave them the strength to bear all of this. That seems impossible for us. And even in this state, look what happens. The Quraysh come and upon this woman. When someone is born blind, it's different for them. But when you've seen all your life and suddenly light becomes black to you, dark, you can't see. On top of the torture, it becomes so scary. If someone wants to put you in a dark cave with lights out and you can't even see your own hand, you can't see anything. Eventually, after minutes and days, you won't be able to take that sight. That darkness will prevail over you and fear will overcome you. Imagine from the eyes of Sayyidina Zanira, she's become blind, she can't see anything. Imagine how fearful a sight this is. But it doesn't matter if your heart couldn't see, if her eyes couldn't see, because her heart could still see. Her heart had the light and the sight of Allah and Rasul in her, the sight of Iman. So it helped her, even in this darkness, the light of Nubuwwah lit her, that darkness for her. Because the Quraysh would come, and even though she was so in such a tortured state, they were so merciless that they were mocking her and taunting her. And you know what they said to her? To bring doubts in her and everyone else. Saying, look, this is a punishment because you went against the false gods, na'udhu. Saying, Lat and Uzza, these idols of theirs, Lat and Uzza, have punished you and taken away your sight because of how you denounced them and because you believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how evil these people were. And at this moment, you have to imagine that scene when Sayyidina Zunayd is out of breath, with tears in her eyes, and panting for breath because of the pain and torture that is on her. And at this moment, without eyesight, she can't even see, and they're saying to her that you're being punished. Look at your state. You and everyone around you, look, she's being punished because she renounced Lat and Uzza. At that moment, look at the Iman in her heart. She says to them, without even being able to look at them, she says, oh, Quraysh, how can Lat and Uzza, who can't see themselves, that's those stones that can't even see who stands in front of them, how can they take my sight away? My sight was taken by the Lord of the worlds, by Allah alone. And if He wants, Allah will return my sight when He wants, if He wants. That is the Iman of this woman. After all of this torture, look at the Iman of her in her heart. And her answer is so powerful that even the Quraysh begin to, fret and look down, saying, what an answer. And they're looking at everyone else who they try to dishearten, who's become even more strengthened in their iman, saying, subhanAllah, truly, those idols that can't see themselves can't take anyone's eyesight away. Allah is the one who takes and gives. And if Allah wants, He will return it when He wants, if He wants. And subhanAllah, the very next morning, saying that Zunairi didn't open her eyes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returned and gifted her eyesight back because of the iman that she had. She opened her eyes up again and she could see those same people and say, look, Allah returned my eyesight. Now tell your Lat and Uzza, those false deities of yours, where are they now? And even in this state, these people, these helpless people who were supposed to be the weak, they were so strong that they made the powerful and rich come to their knees. The people who had the whips in their hand were feeling tired and would come to their knees. Umayyah ibn Khalaf would say, I don't know what you're made of, O Bilal. I am tired, but you'll continue to take these beats. And they would show that this is a strength of iman that you don't possess. Ahadun ahad. Allah is one. My Allah is one. That is the strength of our Sayyidina Bilal. And this torture would continue and continue until this torture would go beyond even the slaves. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Talha ibn Ubaydah, and many others. These people were tied up in ropes and tortured. Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan was tied up and tortured. These people were tied up by the Ayyash ibn Salama, Abdullah ibn Jannah, radiallahu ajma'in. They were sons or brothers of the rich elite. They were the most eligible bachelors and the most forefront, the most richest influential youth. They were being tortured in dungeons. And this continued until Sayyidina Abu Bakr would come, and with the likes of Sayyidina Khadija and many other, Sayyidina Uthman, all these rich influential Sahabah, they would come and deplete all of their wealth just to see a smile of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam whose heart would be bleeding, seeing the state of the torture of these Sahaba who were influential would come and deplete all of their wealth. Sayyidina Abu Bakr would come and use all of his wealth. Sayyidina Uthman would come and use all of his wealth. And Sayyidina Khadija now seeing my beloved husband. When Sayyidina Khadija would see how much it is hurting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she would go and do whatever she could to go and use all of her wealth on these people who would be tortured, to get as much food, water, and medical supplies as they could to come and nurse these people and to come and feed these people and to come and help these people, paying for the burial expenses, paying for the janazah expenses. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, Sayyidina Khadija were people who were charitable from the very beginning. Their wealth meant nothing to them. No matter how much Allah gave them, they would give all that and more back to the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Sayyidina Khadija would be the one who even from the early days of Nubuwwah, she would go and spend all her wealth on orphans and widows. And when she would see innocent young girls, she would go and give them money, saying, you know what, go. No one deserves to grow up without clothes and food and hunger. Every girl deserves to be a princess. And Sayyidah Khadija heart was such that she would go and make every girl feel like a princess. She would go there, buy them clothes, get them food, and say, no. And she was known as the princess of Quraysh. She would go and make every girl of Makkah feel like she was a princess. Whether you were a slave, whether you were weak, poor, whatever color skin you had, whatever you had, no matter what happened. InshaAllah. So as we were discussing, Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha was someone who she would go and she would spread all of her wealth to assist all of those needy and poor. She would even pay for those women who were young and who were poor and whose parents couldn't afford to even marry them or pay for their wedding. She believed that every woman deserved to have a beautiful wedding and a beautiful marriage. She would go and pay for the marriage and for the wedding expenses of all of these innocent girls. She would empower as many women as she could. They could get married and they could enjoy their weddings and all of these different things. She would always be very charitable. But at this moment, when she sees how much it is hurting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to see the state of these people, she loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam so much that not only did she support him emotionally, not only did she take every last breath of her energy to help the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the same woman, remember, that would walk through the middle of the night, went to Waraka, Addas, and so many people just to find consolation to the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he received Nubuwwah. This is the same woman that even past the age 40 would come and climb up the mountain just because she missed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when she wanted to spend time with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was in the cave from age 37 onwards. And she would be the same one who'd worry about him, saying maybe he's hungry, maybe he needs some food. And she would come and cook some food, prepare some food for him, and she would walk all the way up the mountain, above the age of 40s and in her 50s. She would come and walk all the way up this mountain and come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and give him food and make sure he's feed him with her own hands and look after him and give him all the love she can. because of how much she loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And at this moment, when she sees the tears and the pain on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding this situation, she goes and all she wants to do is spend as much as she can, do anything she can just to bring a smile and relief to the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of how much she loved him. Saying, look, 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 they're okay. Your Sahabah, okay, look, we've got food for them, we've got medical supplies for them. Look, we've buried those who have been martyred. She would do anything to make sure that she could bring relief to the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is how much she loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved her so much, because she literally was the joy of his heart and the rock and his emotional pillar, his pillar of support, radiallahu anha. And like this, the Sahaba continued to support all those people who were downtrodden, who were being oppressed during these oppressive moments in Makkah. But the way the Quraysh had actually oppressed and harmed all of those people, all those innocent Sahaba, all of those early Sahaba, like Sayyidina Bilal, Sayyidina Zanir, Sayyidina Sumayyah, Sayyidina Yasir, and many other Sahaba who would become martyrs, who would become shuhada because of this evil torture that they had been through. This is how they were treating these people. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Bilal, Uthman ibn Affan, Sayyidina Khadija, and many other Sahaba would, at night, they would go and support these Sahaba with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because that's how much the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam worried about these people, and he continued to make dua for them by name. Now, days went by until it came to a moment where Sayyidina Abu Bakr, as well as depleting all his wealth, he took all of his wealth and he went and he freed as many slaves as he could. He freed Sayyidina Zanira, he went and freed many women, many slaves with their parents. He went and freed them using all of his wealth up, until he went and he couldn't see Sayyidina Bilal to torture anymore. He went and he said to Umayyah, look, sell Bilal to me. Sell Bilal to me. And Umayyah ibn Khalaf, initially he would decline, because it wasn't about money. He wanted to show a victory statement, because the Quraysh were feeling so defeated at the hands of the weak ones. Think they would die, but they won't give up. And when they died and they became martyrs, they won. We lost. We couldn't get anything. So now the Quraysh were ramping up their torture, saying, look, we just want to have at least one victory. We've given them so much. We're saying, just say one word against your messenger. We're not even asking you to denounce your faith anymore. And we're beating them. We're doing the most inhumane, worst forms of torture we can. We don't know how any human being could survive this. But they're not only surviving, they're stronger than us. Where are they getting this strength from? They're in the downward baffled, saying, where are they getting this strength from? And now the leaders are competing with each other in that field, saying, let's see who can get it out of their slave. So Umayyah eventually, after days upon days, he's in the desert, scorching heat of the desert. He's like breathless, like, what's going on? I can't continue anymore. I can't go on anymore. But Bilal can continue, just saying, Ahadun Ahad, beat me, Ahadun Ahad, whip me, Ahadun Ahad, torture me. My Allah is Ahadun Ahad. Where is he getting this strength from? Where is he getting this perseverance from? I can't endure anymore. I don't have any more stamina just to beat him. And at this moment, Sayyidina Abu Bakr comes and says, sell Bilal to me. And Umayyah ibn Khalaf realizes, you know what? I'm not going to get anywhere. Rather than him passing away and becoming a martyr, and I have to face my face, say, look, I'm also one of those leaders who lost. If I sell him, I can make it look like it's a victory for me. So he starts to negotiate with Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr says, you know what? Name your price, whatever you say, I will give it for my brother. And Sayyidina Bilal is saying regarding, is watching this scene with all of this torture. And Umayyah says, you know what? I'll take this much. I want this much. And he calls him a worthless slave, saying, you know what? I fed him for no reason. And he starts to insult Sayyidina Bilal. And when Sayyidina Bilal was, not even fed properly, he was malnutrition and he was mistreated and oppressed. He said all the negative things about Sayyidina Bilal until eventually he realized that he's got Sayyidina Abu Bakr. He thought he has Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Bilal where he wants them. And he says, go on then, I'll take him for this price. And he knew he was playing his luck, saying no one would give this for a slave, but I'm really playing my luck. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr accepts, saying, I accept. I will pay that price for my brother. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr pays the price, and he instantly takes Sayyidina Bilal in his possession. And Umayyah says, you know what? Fine. He's sold to you. He's no longer mine. He's your problem now. Untie him and do what you want. He drops his whip and he turns around and he begins to gloat as though he's won, as though he's gained something, saying, see, I didn't give up. I continue to beat him. And the other leaders are looking at him and saying, you know what? you're a fool. You lost. And he's like, how have I lost? And at that moment, he turns around and sees what Sayyidina Abu Bakr does. Like he did with all the other slaves. He takes Sayyidina Bilal with the other Sahaba, he unties him, they put him on his shoulders, and he says in front of everyone, whilst Umayyah was trying to dishonor him as a slave, Sayyidina Abu Bakr says, my brother. That's what he says, saying, look, you look down upon him, but I know his true worthy, true rank. Saying, I have bought Bilal, who is my brother, and I have freed him. He's no longer a slave. He's not my slave. He's not my property. He belongs to Allah, and he's no longer a slave. He is free. Bilal is free. My brother is free. He's now a free person. And at this moment, Umayyah gasps and turns around, and the Quraysh leaders are looking at him with anguish, saying, how dare you? Because rather a slave dead than a slave free and alive. Because now we have to see the person who we couldn't bear, those people who we tried to oppress and keep down in society. He's going to walk free amongst us as a free man in society, as an honorable person in society. That is the ultimate loss. Rather he die as a slave than he live as a free person. That is how much it, and they had to witness that as their eyes bled with anger and anguish with this ultimate defeat, saying even if we whip them and beat them, they win because they have Allah on their side. And they knew this, but their kufr couldn't blinded them. It continued to blind them. And look at Sayyidina Bilal with his body that's covered in pain, with his body that's bleeding, with bubbles of burnt skin. He's unable to even walk. Thirsty, he's given his first few drops of water, and the Sahaba take him to the Prophet ﷺ. What is the first thing that Sayyidina Bilal wants to do? Put yourself in the position of Sayyidina Bilal. He isn't just someone who's been tortured and whipped, and now he's not just, his freedom isn't just freedom from torture, it's freedom from slavery. From this torturesome life, this painful life of being kidnapped and being sold as a slave, brought to Makkah and being tortured by the worst and evil people like Umayyah ibn Khalaf. He's finally a free person from being told all his life that he's not a human being, he's an item. From being told all his life he's just a slave born just to serve. That person is now free. He's being told you're a human being. You're our brother. You're equal to all of us. All his life he said, look, you're not equal to all of us. You're low. He's being told you're all equal to all of us. And no, rather you're more honorable than all of us. We look up to you. That is the station of honor that Allah gave to Sayyidina Bilal when he enters in front of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But even in that state of pain, he doesn't care about the freedom of pain. He doesn't care about the freedom of slavery. He doesn't care about being a human being. Because you know what he says? He says, I don't want to be a free human. I don't want to be an honorable man or someone who is respected. I don't want to be any of these things. I want to be someone who serves Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Oh my beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I want to be Ghulam al-Rasul. I don't want to, from being one slave to freedom. Every slave acquires freedom. But what does Bilal acquire? I want to be the servant of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I want to be Ghulam al-Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And like they say that every lover of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can't help but learn from Bilal, who is the greatest of lovers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, I don't want to be a free man. Take that offer away. I want to be in the constant servitude of my master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I want to kiss his feet. I want to serve him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You are my master, oh my beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because serving you is how I will earn the pleasure of my true owner, of my maker, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of my real Lord. That is how Sayyidina Bilal who came into the hands of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kissing his hands, kissing his beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, I am in your service, Ya Rasulullah. That is why we love our beloved Bilal radiallahu anhu, Sayyiduna, our master Bilal radiallahu anhu, so much. And like this, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu not only freed Sayyidina Bilal, but he freed slave of our slave, until his father commented, saying, you're going to become bankrupt. You're using all of your wealth just to buy this slave, and then you're not even benefiting from them. In the world, he said, you're freeing them. But Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, no, what I will get in the akhirah is much more than what I will get from them in the world. He was doing this to make the Prophet happy, to make Allah happy, and to empower these slaves, because he knew that from the very early onset of Islam, one of the first facets of Islam was to empower slaves out of oppression and slavery into freedom. To empower slaves, not just to end slavery just like that, to empower them, so that one day slavery will be no more, because every slave will be empowered. And that's why when you miss a fast, when you break one of the arkan of Hajj or Ihram, when you do any of these things, the first thing is free a slave. Itqu raqabatin, free a slave. That's the first thing that you have to do. And when there's no more slaves, then you can do fidya and kafara and etc. the likes. But the asr is freeing a slave. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr knew this honor that Islam came to empower and manumit as many slaves as you can, to give them a new life. And by that, we will receive a new life. And he continued to do this, and he continued to support as many of those slaves as he can, until there was literally no one left for the Quraysh to torture in this field. But even then, at this moment, because of the power and monopoly that the Quraysh had, even if you were a free person, they didn't care. They became so desperate that even if you were free, they would take you in the streets and just torture you. They didn't need to detain you into that field. They would, wherever you were, if you were even in your homes, they would come and crash into the homes of these innocent people who had nowhere to stay. Remember, these people are slaves. They would become and they would be welcomed into the homes of other Sahaba, and they would share homes and live together in harmony and muhabbat and love, as believers, as one blood. Never mind their caste or family or religion or past religion or past background or past race or color. No matter what happened, they were brothers. They would come and barge into these homes and beat these people. They would catch them in the streets and beat them, torture them, until the torture increased and increased and increased, and it was unbearable. It became unbearable, because now it didn't matter whether you were weak or oppressed. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor. If you were Muslim, you became worse than slaves, and you were tortured. The Quraysh would meet in Dar al-Nadwa and say, you know what? If anyone is Muslim, that's it. They don't have any human rights. They will be tortured to the very, very last step. And it became such that life became their whole day became about just hiding. They couldn't pray salah. They couldn't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They couldn't meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They couldn't even be students of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Darul Arqam. They couldn't even go in the midst of the night. They couldn't learn. They couldn't do anything. Their whole life was just in hiding from torture, hiding from being kidnapped. And many of the other Sahaba were just in dungeons, chained. This is how hard it became. And this continued until the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam could take no more. The Sahaba could take no more, until the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared that the world of Allah, the earth of Allah is vast. It's time that you leave Makkah. This is the time where you have to do hijrah now. And this is the first hijrah of Islam. So you have to leave your homes, you have to leave everything behind and leave for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of your own safety and for the sake, and the Sahaba didn't care about their own safety. They weren't hiding for their lives. They were hiding so they could perform salah, they could worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And only so that they could worship Allah, because now their whole life was just about hiding, and they couldn't even perform ibadah. They couldn't even worship their Lord because of that soul state. They gathered with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and these early few Sahaba that were about 8 to 9 or 11 people, based on different riwayat, a small amount of people were instructed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to leave Makkah secretly and to perform hijrah. And from amongst these early people, they were told that don't worry, Allah will gather us together once again. In other words, I know you don't want to leave me. I know you don't want to leave each other. I know you don't want to leave Makkah, but I promise you Allah will gather us again. But right now, you can't stay here anymore. It's too dangerous now. You have to leave Makkah. So they asked naturally the question, where to? And from one of the miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says there is in the far African lands, towards Ethiopia and Abyssinia, towards those lands, there is a king by the name of Najashi, and he's a very, very honorable and honest king, a very just ruler, and he doesn't want let anyone be wronged under his leadership. No one in his kingdom is wronged. I urge you and I instruct you to do hijrah, to migrate towards Najashi. Go to Najashi, tell him I have sent you, and he won't wrong you, he will honor you. And this first group of people, in the midst of the night, they would have to leave in such a state that they knew that the Quraysh would not allow them, but in hiding, in a secret mission, they had to go with the du'as of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had to hide, and in this stealth mission, they had to somehow do the impossible and leave Makkah through, in hiding, across the world, in ultimate stealth mission. They had to go and leave Makkah through the mountains and through the most discreet locations that they knew in ones and twos. They had to go until they reached the outskirts of Makkah, where they would reconvene, and they would take upon this perilous journey, going to the land of unknown, knowing from one perilous land to another journey, knowing nothing about this place. It is unknown land to this new land, to this unknown people, to this unknown language. They went and they traveled and traveled and traveled until they reached Ethiopia, until they reached the lands of Najashi. And after this first kind of mission went successful, the Prophet ﷺ urged many more to do the second hijrah, which was a larger hijrah towards Abyssinia, towards Najashi. and including many of these people now came, and it was such a painful moment that they had to bid farewell to their homes, they had to bid farewell to their families, they had to bid farewell to their children, to their wives, because they couldn't go in one. Because as this first mission, when it became successful, days went by, and Darul Nadwa, the next council meeting would come, and they started to talk about the rumors, saying there's a disappearance of so and so individual, there's a disappearance of so and so slave. I'm not saying this person for such a day. And when they sent their spies out to go and inquire, the reports came back confirmed, saying yes, as you presumed, O Abu Jahl, O Utbah, O Walid, all of these people are missing. We can't see them anymore. They've all gone missing. And when this news started to, rumors started to surface that they have done hijrah, they have migrated from Makkah, the Quraysh began to tighten and increase this lockdown such that no one could leave Makkah. So it became so difficult that the next mission, which was not just 11, 12, or a small group of people, it was a large group of people. It was a much larger people. They had to go in droves, and they had to go in small units. They had certain brave people who would come and escort two people in twos and threes. So a husband would take out his family in the midst of the night. He would open the door and say, look, my wife and my youngest son, you go first. And an honorable person and an upright hero of Islam would come, and he would take them and safely go on this dangerous mission of escorting these civilians and these innocent civilians and these innocent refugees that were fleeing Makkah, and taking them towards this one kind of meeting point, if you will, this one rendezvous point. They had a safe rendezvous point. He would go and escort them to safety, come back, and then the father would say, now I'll go with you. Then the father would or if they had more children and more wives, he would say, no, now my other wife, my other children, my other wife, my other child. And until all of his family members have gone, then the father would go. And like this, in twos and threes, it would take them days and nights. And all of these people would be gathering in this rendezvous point, this safety point, this assembly point, where these brave heroes of Islam would, by night, under the instructions of the Prophet ﷺ, these people would come and they would painfully bid farewell to the Prophet ﷺ, with the promise of the Prophet ﷺ, don't worry, Allah will reunite us once again. Allah says, Ma'akum, Allah will reunite all of you and all of us together again. And they would go with this promise of as a consolation that don't worry, we're going now, but we will return with the Rasul ﷺ. And they would leave Makkah like this in ones and twos, until it comes to the moment that Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan and Sayyida Ruqayyah, the beloved daughter and son-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, also have to bid farewell to the Prophet ﷺ because of the perilous nature and the torture that they were facing. And the Prophet ﷺ has to bid farewell to his daughter after seeing his son Qasim pass away, after seeing Abdullah passing away, after knowing that Sayyidina Zainab is in the household of her in-laws, married off, after seeing that all of those, he has to bid farewell to Sayyidina Ruqayyah, going to a completely unknown land with his son-in-law Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, and he bids farewell to his beloved daughter and his beloved son-in-law as they leave with everyone else who leaves. And as the rumors are passing day by day, night by night, Quraysh are having even more security, there are small anguishes and small difficulties that time doesn't allow us to go into. But with all of these difficult missions, eventually all of these Sahabah reach that rendezvous point, and they go in one of the most epic and one of the most illustrious moments of the Seerah, when this huge group of Sahaba leave together with tears in their eyes, looking back upon Makkah and looking back towards the Kaaba, looking back towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they are having to bid farewell to. And in this painful embrace, in this painful farewell, they had to go and turn back into the open, vast, unknown land of the desert, into this unknown journey, to this unknown land of Abyssinia, not knowing what to expect, falling behind the initial 11, 12 or so that had gone. And at this moment, this isn't just 5 or 10. Altogether, this was almost between 80 to 100 Sahaba. Remember, it's been 5 years of the Prophet's mission. There were quite a good number of Muslims now. And almost all of them had to do hijrah. Almost 100 of the Sahaba. There were a lot, but there weren't many. There weren't hundreds. But in this statement, there weren't even probably 200 Sahaba. Maybe less than that. Over 100 Sahaba had left and gone towards this hijrah, going towards Najashi, towards his land. And now our camera has to zoom back out and go back into Makkah, where the Prophet ﷺ has the pain of bidding farewell to over 100 of his beloved students and over 100 of his beloved Sahaba. And as they return back to Darul Arqam that night, see how empty Darul Arqam is. See how many seats are empty. See how much pain this teacher has to bear regarding the absence of his students and the safety and the well-being of those who he loves, like his own children, like we said yesterday. And with that pain, he knows that by his side will always be Sayyidah Khadija and Sayyidina Abu Bakr and his beautiful children, his beautiful Sahaba they'll always be there by his side as they he give them strength. And when all of them go away, it's just him and Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha. And just as from the first day when he came running down that mountain, and he was, as the riwayah tell you, he was shivering and he was silent for so long, unable to even see those words. He would look into the eyes and the comforting eyes of Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha that were filled with so much love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Her eyes would be a translation of the love that was bursting from her heart, and he would find solace in her eyes, in her beautiful, large, beautiful eyes, radiallahu anha, of our mother. When everyone else could go away, he could look into her eyes and just find solace. And when she would go to sleep and finally find rest, he could go and just pour his eyes out and pour his heart out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to his Lord in his tahajjud. And it's at this moment that we have to, time is of the essence, we have gone over. We will end today's, we will complete today's session, and we will continue tomorrow with the beautiful seerah of the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Jazakallah khair wa akhiru da'wan, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.